Good morning. Welcome back to the farm here. I hope everybody had a great Christmas and got everything you ever wanted and all of that and spent time with your family and most importantly celebrated the birth of Jesus. Anyway, we're back here at the farm. I was really hoping that today and tomorrow we were going to get a chance to finish the combine up and get that out of here. That is not going to happen. I have had some family stuff come up here for later today, this afternoon. And going to be gone most of today and possibly tomorrow. So we'll see what we can get done. But I thought I would take this opportunity this morning while we've got a little bit of time. We're going to do kind of our 2024 trials and results video and go through all the different stuff that we tried this year, different contest results and all that kind of stuff. And just kind of fill you in on, how things turned out. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm trying to get everything set up here with phone recording me, computer, screenshot, recording everything. We'll figure it out, but we're going to go with it. We will go ahead and start off here this morning with some yield contest results. So I was in 2 different contests this year. Actually, I was in 3 different contests this year. We're going to start with the corn growers one because I'm still waiting on my bean results. I'm hoping to get them before I'm done filming here this morning, but I don't know if that's going to happen or not. So anyway, I entered the 2024 National Corn Growers Yield Contest, and their results, you can go to their National Corn Growers website, go to this page, and then hit this all entrance, and it pulls up a spreadsheet that looks like this. And if you go all the way down to what page are we on here? 60. Page 60, you get to the conventional irrigated, actually it'd be 59, conventional irrigated for the state of Michigan. And you will see really quickly that I did not win. Michigan had extremely good weather for the most part this year, and it is an extremely competitive contest in the state of Michigan. Yields were better than I've ever seen them in this contest. So Jake Droz up in Allegan won again. This is at least the 3rd year in a row that I know he has won. Got a yield of 351. Really impressive. There was 17 entries in this one category that broke 300 bushels. And if you go down just a little bit farther, you'll see mine here. At 285, which is respectable. I was happy with that. That's pretty respectable yield. I knew it wasn't going to win at the time, but just for context, 2 years ago in this exact same contest, in this exact same category, same state, it was the same field really, I got 2nd place in the state with a yield of 282. So I did better than I did 2 years ago, but placed 24th, I think, instead of 2nd. So that just tells you how much better the state of Michigan was as a whole. And as far as just generalizing the areas in the state of Michigan that did well versus didn't, this southern edge, southeastern corner was the driest part of the entire state, especially late in the growing season. So most of these other yields are to the north and west or east, and just, yeah, they had great weather. So congrats to Jake, everybody else that did well in this contest, and we'll try again next year. But we did all right. I'm not upset by that. I did have a 2nd entry in here a little bit farther down the page. My 12S75 went 267. So, 285 is not bad. So there was another contest that I was in the state of Michigan, was the Michigan Soybean Association's soybean yield contest, which is a state contest just for the state of Michigan that I entered. This was the first time I've ever competed in that one. And we also have a internal contest within Golden Harvest for Go for the Gold for soybeans. And I entered that as well. I had 2 entries in that. Just one of those was qualified in the Michigan Soybean Yield Association or soybean contest. And the field that did the worst of my 2 that were in the Golden Harvest contest was the one that happened to be in Michigan. The other one was technically an Ohio entry. And so, yeah, but here's the results on that. Let's see, start here. Okay, so here's the yield contest results for that. Now, they break stuff into 3 different categories: early maturity, a mid maturity, and then a late maturity, and then irrigated and non-irrigated in each one of those. So there's 6 categories for the state. Now it's early maturity for the state, which I think is like a 1.9 and above or something. What's it say? Yeah, 2.0 to 2.6 is the mid. So I had a 3.4 bean. I had probably the full season of anybody, but I'm the farthest south of most people. So we scroll down to that and go to the late maturity, non-irrigated, so 2.7 and above, and you can see right here, again, respectable, 78.68 on that result with those 34.42s. Our full season beans were not as good as our early season beans, and 78's not bad yield, but we didn't win that category. We were 5th. Meh, it's okay. I had a better soybean entry. It just wasn't the one that I entered in this contest, so that's what it is. So I have not gotten the Golden Harvest Go for the Gold results yet back. I'm hoping to get them. If I do, I'll throw them in here. If not, it is what it is. I know I did not win the state of Ohio, but I may have gotten second. I don't know. We'll see what the numbers say when I get them. I talked to my agronomist on the Golden Harvest side to see if they had this information on these Go for the Gold contest results yet. And while the data is out there, they don't have a formal announcement or anything for me to show you. So, but I can, at least at this point in this video, tell you what my entry was. And I can tell you that I did not win the state of Ohio. But in my early planted soybeans, we pulled that entry off of there. It was barely in Ohio, but it was in Ohio. Got a average yield on our 1.5 acre strip or whatever it was that we had to harvest there of 89.02 or 0.20 bushels per acre, which is, that's dang good beans. 89 was awesome. That was fantastic. So pretty sure I got second in the state. Sounds like somebody broke 100 way down south. So pretty respectable. I'm really happy with that. But yeah, so that's the results from that. Now let's get into some of the field trial stuff here. All right, we are going to move on to some wheat trials here. And, well, this first one that I've got pulled up, so this is in the My John Deere app. This is a field where I had a split application. Now, it's a little funky here what's going on, so I kind of want to explain this to you. This was a field where we did a foliar product, and when you look at the yield map, let me just get rid of that box. Let's just get rid of it. You can definitely tell in the center here that it yielded better than on the edges. And when you match that up over here with this application map, those two spots do not mesh. It does not look right? And so you kind of start wondering what the heck happened. Well, here's what happened when we sprayed this field. So Dad comes in here, he starts in this corner, and he perimeters the field, goes around, and then he starts going back and forth from the edge by the road here, right? So he went around the outside of the field, did another pass, looks like, maybe 2, and then stopped, probably down here, and he dumped the chemical in. The foliar that we were trialing, he just kind of dumped it in the top of the tank. And so you would expect that this is where our split is going to be on any kind of a yield difference, but it's not. The split was over here farther, right? About right here, which would be, like over here. It's like it took a round for that chemical to get distributed through the tank. And I'm sure he didn't sit there with the agitation running for 10 minutes to let it fully disperse. I wouldn't have either. But it really threw me when I saw this yield. I'm like, what the heck is going on? But I'm pretty sure that's what happened, is that basically we just didn't get the chemical mixed thoroughly quick enough, and it took a round or 2 for it to make its way through the solution system on the sprayer to actually start getting applied. And I do think that this break is a result of that product, but the maps don't match perfectly. So when I highlight out this block here that performed really well, and I know there's some red streaks over here and stuff, that was partial passes with the combine that just didn't register quite right on the yield monitor. So we're going to isolate that as well. And then you come down here to the bottom and you see in this selected zone, it's 28.3 acres, it averaged 130 bushel. That's dang good wheat. That's really good wheat. Now, if I pick that box up and I move it over here, we're going to have to shrink it a little bit, into this zone that does not look so pretty, and see what the yield is there, we're at 120 bushels to the acre. Not bad. That's still really good wheat, right? But that tells me there's about a 10 bushel difference. And can I say for sure that it was that product that did it? No. but it sure looks like it based on the application map. So I don't know. I don't know how exactly to read that one. For those of you wondering, that product is my source product. I shrink a little more down to 119 there. It's hard to say that that's what it was for sure, but that's the best explanation. See, okay, yeah. So the application map that we're looking at, this is an important note. This is the application that we made without the source in it. So it had some boron and some propaz, which is a generic fungicide. And this was applied on, what's the dates? April 22nd. So this is not a head scab fungicide. This is like a flag leaf foliar fungicide to keep disease off of the leaves. And that's when we put that source in with it. So we have another application map on the 22nd that looks like this. That's the rest of the field. And that one, we had the Borisol, the Propaz, and then the Sound XCB source. Typed it in wrong. It's fine. So yeah, I can't say for sure, but just looking at this yield map, I am going to estimate that source made us about 10 bushels to the acre on wheat. We need to test it again next year. We need to do a better job testing it next year, but that's what my preliminary data tells me. Okay, let's get into some soybean results. We're going to start with the soybean plot results. Okay, there we go. So if you start out, you go to my website here, my seed business website, which is excelseeds.com. You can see that right here. This is my seed business logo, and you can go to this website, and then if you click on this little 3 lines over here, it pulls up this menu, and yeah, well, these might not always be there, but they are for right now. But if you click plot results, it will take you to this page, and you can click on 2024 soybean plot results. And that brings up my soybean plots. So here's what it is. We had a new variety this year, the Golden Harvest GH 3035 E3s that won the plot. 77.4 was the average for that strip. Now keep in mind, my bean plot was planted a little bit later. They were not the best looking beans most of the season, and so I didn't expect them to be the highest yielding because the earlier planted definitely made a big difference for us this year. But yeah, 3035s did well. The 2674s, this bean had a fantastic year across the board. The 2814s still did really, really well as well. The 2674 and the 2814 were the 2 best E3 beans in the plot last year as well. So good to see both of those doing well. Then we've got an Extend Flex here with these 3225s, 3373s, 2292s. Those are all beans with the exception of the 3225 XF. These are all beans that I've planted a lot of, sold a lot of, like we're going to use a bunch of. So really good to see all of that. Last year, the Extend Flex kind of dominated my plot. This year, the Enlist dominated the plot. Just kind of the way the genetics worked out this year. The better Extend Flex varieties that I've had in the past, we've kind of moved on from in favor of some newer ones. We've got new Enlist beans out. These are all relatively new. So if you look, for the most part, anything with whatever the number is, it's at the end of this, like this 3035 ends in a 5. So those are a new release for 2025. That's a new bean for next year. The 2020 or the 2674s, 2814s, those were new this past year. So I had them in plots in 23. We planted them field scale this year. The 3373s would be a year older. 2292s from 22. We've had that one for a while. So, you know, that's what we're seeing, and yeah, stuff is working. Now, the one thing about this that really confused me was look at this one way down here at the bottom, the 3023 XF. 63.6, which is not a bad yield by any means, but they were the worst one in the plot. However, we have, on the end of my plot, there's a spot that can get sort of stressed where there's end rows, but there's not really end rows. And we turn around on it, and there's compaction, and it just gets a little wet. And so there's a spot there that's really stressed, and they did not handle that stress well at all. That's the same bean that I planted in March. That was their best beans across the board. Like, that's a little confusing for me because it handled the cold, early, wet planting, no, not wet, but cold, early stress of, you know, being planted in March taken 4 or 5 weeks to come out of the ground, but planted late in my plot with a little stress, they didn't handle it there very well. So I still like the 30-23. I'm planting more of them next year, even though they didn't do very good in my plot because they were my best bean. So that's what that is. Speaking of the early beans, let's take a look at that field and the yield map from it. I'm going to go ahead and do this contour because it just makes it a little prettier to look at. This was our early planted field of beans, and you can see we had some spots in the middle of this field that seemed to yield a little bit better. Now you'll notice these 2 skinny streaks. That's from narrow passes because of when we were doing our yield contest stuff, and I wanted to take full header widths just to make easy figuring. So we're going to ignore that data. But looking at this application strip on the right here, overlaid with our yield map, did our applications, and there was several that followed this exact same path, did it matter? Hard to say for sure. The hard break in this line doesn't seem to match where this one is. It's more so up here, but I do think we saw a little bit of results out of that. So let's just look at our data analysis here. When we look at the whole field, applied versus not applied, we saw 84 bushel average where in the yellow strip here, and a 79 bushel outside of it. Now that's a little misleading because you got these end rows and trees and stuff. So we'll isolate that out. We'll just throw a box around it like this, and we'll see what it says here at the bottom. So now in that box, where we applied was 84, where we did not apply was an 80 bushel average yield. Okay, that's still 4 bushel average. Let's shrink our box down and move it to the bottom side. Go a little farther. Something like that, and see what it says here. So this video is going to get long, just in case you're wondering. It's going to be a long one. Okay, so inside it now, we're at 82 and 84, so not as much of a difference, but still some. So I'd have to go in and add up all the stuff that we put on there. Did 2 bushel or 4 bushels of beans pay for all the stuff we put on there? Probably not, frankly, probably not. But it may have done something. Now, because we threw everything at it there, and I'm talking foliars, I'm talking fungicide, which the whole field got to fungicide. So the difference would have been mostly the foliar feed products and maybe like the source, that kind of stuff, additional spray passes. It helped. I don't know if it paid for itself. So let's dive into that a little bit farther in a couple of other fields that we have. Okay, so this is another field, and we basically have the same trial here, except for I'm pretty sure the only difference in this one was my foliar feed stuff. So there's about 3 different applications that we made adding the foliar stuff on the yellow strips over here. And this was a pretty big sample size. We've got this nice strip in the middle that we can kind of try and highlight out and see if there was any difference. And you'll notice on the yield map here a little bit of that stripping. This is the same thing. We did do one of those other go for the gold entries on this field. This is the one where I did the Michigan contest. This field was in Michigan. So, and judging from the yield map, I should have pulled from over here instead of over here. But hey, you don't know that when you're combining. You know where the historically good spots in the field are. So anyway, let's do this. We'll see what it says here. Okay, so inside the selected zone, 73 where we applied, 74 where we did not. That would tell you that there was no benefit to the foliars. Let's check it over on this side. $73 and $74. Same. Okay. That's a result. It's not the result we were hoping for, but it's a result. I got one more field. Let's go check it. Okay, so here's another field, and we basically, from the field that we just watched, sprayed that, pulled out of the field, came out and sprayed in this field until it ran out. So we basically, what did we make? Round 2, almost 2 rounds. 3.5 passes. Okay? Right in the middle of this field. Nothing jumps out at me on the yield map, but once again, we'll highlight out some areas and see if there was any difference in the treated versus untreated. I already know the answer to this, but we'll look at the data. 72 in the non-treated, 69 in the treated. Well, that's not what we want. Let's go across the whole field. $69 and $71. So I can reasonably confidently say that my foliar program did absolutely nothing for me this year on soybeans. Starting to find that trend. Like, I've been trying to do stuff, and I use different products this year than I've used in the past, and nobody's stuff seems to be helping. And so I'm still trying to figure out what exactly that means. Because I don't think these products are garbage and that they just don't work. I just think that every situation is different. And I've always kind of had in the back of my mind that you have to get the base fertility right first, right? You have to have your phosphorus and your potassium in place. You have to have the right pH. You got to get your calcium and all your ratios correct. You got to get your base saturations where you need them. And take care of the basics. And then once you do that, you can use foliars and spoon feeding nutrients to kind of kick you up to the next level. I'm finding that not to be the case. I really don't think if you have excellent fertility in your ground, which most of these fields that we're doing these tests on do, because I'm trying to push things, right? I'm trying to take them to the next level. It's not working. In talking to some other people, they kind of give me the opposite opinion, where the foliars are a band-aid for poor fertility fields. So if you don't have good nutrients and you don't have the basics right, you can spoon feed some nutrients into a growing crop and correct for some of those deficiencies and stuff. And I haven't tested that theory. Might be worth doing some foliar passes on some of our poorer performing fields in the future instead of our better performing fields, and seeing if we get any results in that situation. But for me to take a field this field averaged around 70, 72. The other field that we looked at was in the mid 70s. The first field with the March planted beans was in the low 80s. For me to think that I'm going to take those and push them to 90 or 100 bushel beans by adding the foliar programs does not seem to be the case. Now, could I take a field that averaged 55 and turn it into 65 bushel beans with them? Maybe that's where the answer is, and it's the poorer performing fields. But anyway, that's what we learned on soybeans. I've got one more field to show you, but I kind of screwed up in my applications on this one, so you're going to have to trust me a little bit on the data. We did see a result here, and I'll show you what it is. Okay, so this is a big field here. There's 128 acres in this, and this is a field where I did some strip trial work with the Source, the Sound Ag product that I use on soybeans. And we were trying to do an application timing trial here. And so if you look on the right-hand side, you'll see these 4 strips. We're going to focus on the middle 2 mostly. But basically what I did was I went in and I sprayed a round with the Source by itself. That was the only thing in the tank, Source and water. And I tried to do 2 different application timings. And what we did was, so this first one I think was, what was the date? 6/27. They were basically R1 beans. They were just starting to flower. I was hoping to go late vegetative, but I just didn't get to it in time. I needed to be in there a week earlier and didn't make it. So it was an early application, and then we came back and did an R3 application and did the strip next to these, and then we left a 240-foot strip untreated. So as you follow my mouse here, so basically this strip was R1, this strip in the middle was R3, and then this strip here would have been not applied at all, untreated. And so when I take a box and highlight it like this, I'm trying to split the middles of the untreated sections because they were all untreated at this timing, but what's outside the box in there was treated just at a different time. Does that make sense? Okay, so this would be comparing the yellow strip that was treated at R1 versus a untreated strip. And if you look down here at the bottom, we'll see a 79 in the treated, 77 in the untreated. Now, John Deere did away with the decimal points in their yields, which really frustrates me because I like accurate data. So I don't know if that's 2, if it's 2.4, if it's 2.6, or if it's just 2, or maybe it's 1.6. I don't know. but so it shows me a 2 bushel advantage there. When I made the R3 application, I forgot to change in the display where I put the source in, where I didn't. So it just gives me a blanket map and it doesn't highlight it outright. So I kind of lost the application map to get good data off of this. But if I just slide this box over, now we're comparing R1 versus R3 treated. I know it doesn't show up that way, but that's what it is. I know this because I made the application. And so where it says target rate not available down here, we were at 81. Well, that's actually the R3 application, where the R1 application was 79. So if we know that we gained 2 bushel treated versus untreated at R1, and then we go to 81 versus the 79, that's another 2 bushels. So we actually picked up 4 by going to an R3 application versus the 2 doing it in an R1 application. That's good. Oh, not that. Don't do that. Keep the box the same size. We slide it over again to here. This is basically just a second replication. Honestly, I don't know what this is going to tell me. We got this big red spot in the middle. That's going to affect our data. Not real good. See the same thing though. Still 2 bushel, right? 83 versus 81. So and this is a R1 versus untreated again. So it seems to be we picked up 2 to 4 bushel. Now what I can't do is show you this, the treated R3 versus untreated without trying to manipulate the data or not manipulating, but cut this box in half and then we slide it over. And that should show us that, but without having a hard line there to see and follow, it's hard to say. But I have seen this over and over and over again where the source product, yeah, but there's nothing in the treated zone. We have 0.1 acres. So those average, is it 76 or 75? The source product seems to be gaining me between 2 and 4 bushels an acre on beans. I've always said it was like 2.5 to 3. That's what historically I have seen. Looking at data from past years, I'm seeing the exact same thing this year. So that says 76. If I pull this box over to my R3 treated zone, I don't know if we'll see more or not. There's a big red drowned out spot there, so maybe not. Probably not. Yeah, 73, 74. So it's sorting through the data is hard, especially when you don't have good data, which I did to myself this year. But I do think that we gained some from using that source product on soybeans. I've seen it in the past. I see the same thing again this year. I'm going to keep using it. So that wraps up the soybean discussion. If you guys have any more questions on soybeans, feel free to leave them down in the comments, and we will move on to corn. And we're going to start with the corn plot data. So let me get that pulled up. Back to my website here and our results. We click on 2024. We're going to start with Waldron corn. This is the one that's right outside my window by the house here between me and the seed warehouse, or actually the corn was behind the seed warehouse this year. That's not right. That's the Lucas County plot. Okay, go back. That's Berkey. Do I have these wrong? That's Berkey. Waldron corn. Okay, we gotta fix my website. It's wrong. Here is the right corn plot data. Okay, so let's go into this here a little bit. You'll notice that our yields they were quite good. We had a really, really good corn year here and just caught the right rain at the right time, and it was very good for us. So we'll go ahead and jump into it. So this is the corn plot that was right behind the seed warehouse here, and you'll notice this top one, 12U11, which we'll talk about this U here. That is a designator for a new product for 2025, kind of like the 5 was in the beans. So 12U is a new one for next year. That means that in the plot here was basically the only look we got at it. I think I had a couple of bags that we planted in one of the fields. But for the most part, we're gonna really test it next year. But we got to look at it this year, and it did quite well with a yield of 277, and beat second place by 25 bushels. So that one is really, really impressive. Love to see that. That was good. As we move down here, we go to 10B61, which the B was a new product for 24, so that one is just a year old here. And I was surprised to see that one do that well. We have a really, really strong lineup between 110, 11, and 12-day products. And so stuff has to be really good to make it into our lineup there. And the top two hybrids in my plot were both basically new ones in that maturity zone. That's a good thing. So, and then we see our 12S75. That one's been good for a number of years for me now. One that we had up in the irrigated field. Didn't have its greatest year across the board. It doesn't like late season drought stress, but still did pretty well in this plot at 251 bushel. Then we got another new product here, the 08U at 250. 10L16 has been one of my standby awesome hybrids. Same with 11V76. Those are my two favorite established ones. It's going to be really interesting to see what kind of happens with some of these full season ones and the new products versus the ones that we've had around for a while. Like 10L and 11V have been awesome for me. Is 12U and 10B going to unseat them and we go that way? I don't know. Another year of data will tell us a lot. As we move down here, you'll see this 03U, actually 203 days. Again, both relatively new products at 238. So now we're down right at plot average here. However, these are the two that are the closest in their maturity range, right? So anything you look at like 105 day and below, in those two kind of rise to the top of it. New 105 day did well. And then we start getting into some of the earlier stuff. And none of these are bad. I mean, even this 01U at 205 is not a bad yield, but certainly off the pace from some of the other stuff, which is typically what I see. The earlier maturing just can't keep up with the full season. And that was definitely the case in the plot this year. So there's the results on that. Our test weights across the board were excellent this year. This 105 day at 59.8 was really impressive. All of them were very, very good. So now we do have another plot to look at. We'll pull up the 2024 Berkey corn plot here. This one was obviously at our farm down to Berkey. Very different growing conditions. We were much, much drier there than here. I looked it up at one point. In the month of August, we had 5 inches of rain here. That was really good. We had less than 2, like 1.5-ish at Berkey, and then hardly anything through September and October. So it got much, much drier faster there. And that's why the corn yields were not nearly as good. So plot average of 187, 188 there. Top of the plot, my 10L16. That's been really good at 206. And then that 01U that was at the bottom of my plot at Waldron was right towards the top of this one. So in a stressier or low yield environment, maybe that one does better. It's just different situations. Things perform different. So then we got a 00A97, and then here's that 103 day that did well in the other plot, did well here. So that's an advantage. And then here's our 12U, which again, that's good in both the 08U. Having two plots spread out by 35 miles with very different growing conditions lets me look at the data and say, okay, which ones are consistent? Which ones did well in both locations under very different environments and stuff? Those are the ones that we kind of want to trend towards. You know, we don't want to do a lot of stuff where something that just, it struggles with, you know, certain conditions, because we don't know what the weather's going to be next year, right? Perfect example, I said that 12S75 hasn't had the best year. It was third in my plot at Waldron where we had good late season rain. But look at this plot here at Berkey. That 12S75 was the bottom of the plot at 166. It had late season drought stress, and it just, that hybrid can't handle that. So that's why we don't plant a lot of that kind of stuff. Now, the 12S75 that I do plant has always been underwater. It's been irrigated, so it's never really been an issue for me. But anyway, so that is the plot data. Now let's move on to some of the field trials stuff. Okay, so we're going to start in on corn. Now, this is the first field of corn that we harvested. It was not our best corn. It kind of just died early, and it was mature. You know, average yield in this field was 196. Not great. No, it wasn't terrible. I was fine with it at the time. Turns out the rest of our stuff was mostly quite a bit better than that. So this one was a little bit disappointing, but I just didn't know it at the time. But there's two things here that I want to point out and look at. Number one, you see this red streak right here. Right? Let me take the contour off, and you'll see that that was basically one or two combine passes right there, that all of a sudden something changed drastically. Well, what the heck happened? I know what happened, and I can show you. So we're going to pull up a map from when we side dressed nitrogen. And look at that. Look at that. Somehow or another, there's a strip over here that didn't get any nitrogen. And I know what happened. This was a total human error, operator error on my part. I did this, right? So you'll look, and we were putting anhydrous on here, and then all of a sudden we got this red, we got a yellow, we got a red, we got a green. That's a tank ran out. We had a tank that ran empty. It started surging, getting gas vapor, or vapor, and then liquid, vapor, and then liquid. That's what happens when the rate changes. And it ran out. So I shut it off there. We drove back up here by the end of the road where I had spare tanks, and we changed tanks. And then instead of driving all the way back, I said, well, I'm just going to take the next pass down, and then we'll go back and fill that in. I forgot to go fill it in. And so that strip did not get any nitrogen. And this is the result. Now, I'm not going to sit there and try and figure out what the difference is in yield, because clearly it was one combine pass was right in the middle of that. The other one was probably like 50-50. So like half of that pass had nitrogen, half of it didn't, or 2/3 or whatever it is. And even this other pass on the other side may have had that something. In fact, we can overlay these maps a little bit more. And let me change it. Instead of an applied rate, we'll go to a target rate so you can actually see it a little bit. Yeah, definitely. So you can see, like down here in the blue, that one streak that's showing through from the background is totally in it. Make that opacity 100%. So now any yield map that you can see poking through there is the stuff that didn't get any nitrogen. So we had one pass that was all the way in it, another pass that was 2/3 in it, one pass that was 1/3 in it. It happens. It is what it is. You know, it's that unintended check strip that says, yep, nitrogen pays, doesn't it? Okay, so we're going to get rid of, let's zoom back out here. We're going to get rid of our application map. Now, this field also happens to have another trial that we did in it, and one that I got asked about a few times. So you guys will remember back to last fall, we were having some tractor issues with our 9R. Common theme there, right? We ended up demoing a 9RX 640. You guys remember that? Yeah, it was a pretty cool deal. And they let me use that to finish up some fields and stuff that I had to get done. And then I was like, hey, how much do you guys, is it okay if I do a little bit more? And they said, don't go over 10 hours on it. And I only had, a few at that point. So we actually came to this field and ran that ripper. It was bean stubble, and we did some of it, but then we got to the point where I'm like, all right, I'm not comfortable putting any more hours on it. Like, I don't want to take advantage of the situation. And so we finished this field with the 8RX and our sunflower chisel plow. So 9RX 640 with the 2730 disc ripper versus 8RX with a sunflower chisel plow, disc chisel. Very different tools, basically with the same primary objective. But now I don't have a map of where we used the 9R with the 2730, but I do have a map of where we did with the 8R and the chisel plow. And it was basically right here. So anything that's in yellow on this side was done with the 8R. Anything on the other side was done with the 9RX. Okay. So everybody kept asking me, did you see a difference in the, because of the tillage depth? Because with the 2730 and all that horsepower, we were able to pull it 12, 13 inches deep and go a lot deeper than what we had typically. Now, with our sunflower chisel plow, we probably only go 6 or 7 inches deep. Totally different heavy tillage tool. Like I said, just trying to accomplish the same thing. And so we can check that. Nothing jumps out. You don't see it visually on the yield map. But let's just go ahead and, let's click the data analysis for the whole field here. And you'll see that where our target depth was 6, basically the yellow, our average yield was 190. Where the depth was not available, meaning we ran the 2730 over it, it was 200. But that only tells part of the story, because see, these end rows and these end rows were all done with the sunflower, and they're terrible. So you cannot include that. Really, we shouldn't even include this nitrogen strip that we found over there. So let's just go like this. And now we'll see, 6 versus not available. What's the difference here? I'm guessing we're not going to see much. 210 versus 207. Is that a 3 bushel difference from tillage? Maybe. It's possible. I would argue that it's probably more just soil types and elevations and stuff, and who knows. But that's the information that we have on that. So I know a lot of people have been asking about it. So, all right, let me pull up something else. What about the irrigation? So we've put in this whole new fancy irrigation system this year. Instead of using our old Cadman hard hose Traveler and leaving a bunch of lanes and stuff, we bought this extremely sophisticated, fancy new 360 rain. We drilled a well, we buried pipe, changed things a lot. Well, here's that field. You can see the shape of it and why we don't just put a pivot on it, because the pivot would not cover this field, not efficiently, not very well. It would be tough to irrigate with a pivot. So our 360 rain is able to basically reach every corner of this field. Our old Cadman did not reach this triangle in the back. Could not irrigate this at all. We did part of this one, but basically cut it off about right here because the runs just got too short to make. And so we used to pump out of this corner and laid pipe all the way across the center and then pulled out east and west across there. Now we have the well over in this corner, sort of by this barn, and we buried this pipe. You can see that little strip there, and right here is about where our riser is and our 360 rain's home point. Okay. Now there's a lot of colors on this map, but you know, this field averaged 246. This was good corn. Did the irrigation pay though? Well, yes. And here's how we're going to prove it, right? So the irrigation covered almost this entire field. I really didn't leave a check strip. We didn't leave something right through the middle to say, hey, what is it here where we don't do anything? Didn't do that. But right in here where we buried our pipe, we left 60 feet, 24 rows. There was a one pass with the irrigation that we did not make because we had that ridge of pipe over, you know, like a 20-foot spot that we had run over, and there was basically no corn there, or just some little strips. So this pass right next to that and the second pass right next to that one did not get water. And so we can kind of figure out, okay, well, what did those two passes yield and what did it do right next to it? And that will tell us the difference in how much our irrigation paid, at least in that particular spot. So I'm going to select here and we're just going to outline it. We're going to click here, down to here, and I'll keep some of the extreme reds out of it because that was probably too close to the riser. There. And then back. Okay, so inside that box, what did that yield? This is the non-irrigated inside that box. Did not get any additional water throughout the year. And that's a fairly sandy area of this field. So selected zone, we're only a little over half an acre, but the yield there was 214. It's not horrible. But let's move this box down to the two passes immediately adjacent to it. $254. So that's a 40 bushel increase in just in that spot right there. And that's pretty consistent with what I feel like we have seen in the past in other spots, or when I was, you know, looking at that earlier this year. I figured it was about 40 to 50 bushel difference. So yeah, the irrigation paid. That's the best way that I can do to prove it and say, yep, that's what we got. That was our increase. Now you can see there's other areas of this field that was much better. This area in particular over here, that's lower ground, it's heavier, it's got more water holding capacity. We didn't run out of moisture there as much. It was irrigated about the same or even one pass less than some of this up here, but this is sandier. So now you'll also notice, you can see the backbone in the center where we did run over some corn. Yep, it happens. And you can see that our end rows were not as good. Well, this is trees because there's a woods here. Some of this is compaction and stuff getting run over. Next year when we plant this, we're going to eliminate this set of end rows that goes between the triangle and this backfield, and we're going to actually plant a set of end rows right across the center to try and keep it from running over as much corn and to make it more efficient going all the way through here, instead of making another little mini backbone on these end rows back here. So we'll get better, we'll get more efficient, but yeah, that's the irrigated field and kind of the results that we saw from that. So, all right. What is next? So this next one here is another field where we have actually two different things going on here. The first one, it was a fungicide trial. We'll go over that one first. So if I pull up this map, it's going to look a little funky, but it'll work. This is the application map from my Haggy guy. And you'll see all these strips. That's because his computer wasn't mapping quite the way it was supposed to be. It was a software issue that he got updated and fixed it later on. But this field, it is what it is. So, but we've got this block here that did not get tassel fungicide on. And when you look at it, yeah, you can see that it did not yield as well. Now, I think we had some coon damage in this one strip that's a little red, or I don't remember exactly what's going on there. So that skews things a little bit, is what it is. But let's select out a zone here. And we'll do something like that. And we should get some information on, this untreated block versus the treated block and how much of a yield difference that we saw there. So 251 treated, 240 untreated. So that would tell you that the fungicide made an 11 bushel difference for us. That's good. 11 bushels is worth it. That pays for it. Depending on what you're using and how much your costs are and stuff. I mean, I know it's expensive, but it was worth it. Now, we wouldn't want to see much less than that, but it was worth it. So even at 350 corn, which corn is worth more than 350 now, but that was kind of the low. So 350 times 11 is $38.50 an acre of increased gross income. Variable costs on that for us was right around $30 an acre, or maybe a touch less. So yeah, paid. Didn't double our money, but it was, an extra $10 an acre of net income. So that's good. That worked. We made money putting fungicide on our corn. Now, the other thing that we have in this field is I had a foliar test strip. So let's get rid of this map and let's pull up this one. So over here on the other side of this field, I have 3 sprayer passes where we used more of my foliar feed products. And I used them in some other fields as well, but that was part of this one. And this is the one where I isolated stuff the best so that we could tell, did they work? Did they not work? So let's highlight out a pass. And we're going to stay away from those trees because trees suck and they kill yield. And we'll stay away from right behind the house and do something along these lines. Okay. Now there was actually like 3 different applications, kind of the same thing with the beans. We made several trips over this same spot trying to really push the yield doing the full program. Target rate not available, 258. Target rate 18.7, 257. So that's not good. That would tell me that we saw as little results there. Yeah. It's basically the same thing I saw in the beans. I've looked at this in some other spots as well. My foliar fertilizer products, foliar fertility products, they aren't working for me. So I got to figure something else out there. I think at this point with the new spreader that we bought, we are better off allocating any dollars that I was going to spend on foliar stuff to putting an extra whatever rate of potash and phosphorus out there, maybe upping our nitrogen rates on some of this corn. And we got to recalibrate our yield goals a little bit because our historic yield goals or yields are not what we're getting now. Like our yields are better now than what we kind of typically plan and fertilize for. And so where I used to, make my nitrogen rates for 180 to 200 bushel corn, well, that's not cutting it anymore. And so putting 200 pounds of nitrogen total down when we're raising 250 bushel corn on some of these fields, that's not enough. I mean, it is because clearly we're doing it, right? It's working, but what am I giving up? Because you can only get that nitrogen efficiency ratio so far out of whack before eventually you're giving up yield. And it's typically what people like to think is like 1-to-1. So for every bushel of corn that you produce, you need a pound of nitrogen to do it. And so where we were, thinking we were going to get 200 bushel corn, we'd put about 200 pounds of nitrogen on. Now, I typically have been a little bit aggressive on that and cutting it, thinking that I can get a little bit better efficiency. Maybe it's 0.9 pounds of N to a bushel of corn or something like that. But, like at 250, or like in this strip, we're 258, 257, but we'll just say 250 bushel corn. Let's see, which way do I do this? Nope, not that. Let's go 200 pounds of nitrogen divided by 250 bushel corn. That's a 0.8. So we're down to 0.8 pounds of N per bushel. And that's great. I'm glad we can do that. But I don't want to get much less than that because we're going to be giving something up. And so if we're going to keep pushing yields, I think we've got to up our nitrogen rates and maybe start putting 220 to 240 pounds on. And then maybe that makes 260, 70, 80 bushel corn more feasible. So anyway, just something that I've been looking at and thinking, these foliars aren't doing it for me. Where else can I allocate those dollars and have more of an impact? So over in this field, can I just click on that? Yeah. I might have to pull up the, let me see if I can do that over here Well, you guys look at that, but we had, no, I'm not going to be able to. Oh, maybe I will. I had my high management plots out here. Let's see. That's the potash application map. We don't need that. Here's the corn harvest map. Right there it is. And so over here we had some strips. Yeah, okay. Here's the data. We'll just check the data. So we had two different hybrids, 03U and 05U, and did two different replications here of the same trial, two different harvest strips, trying to see what's the difference between my standard practice and my high management. And there was a whole bunch of things. So the standard practice was basically just, bare minimum stuff that we can do to raise a corn crop. The high management was anything that I have that I can throw in, I'm going to. So it did include all of those foliar fertilizer stuff, but it also included wide drop nitrogen. It also included the Sound Ag source product. It included fungicides that the standard did not. It got the some insecticide on it. It just basically anything that I could think of to put at it. And it was an expensive program. Don't get me wrong. We spent a lot of money doing it. But that's not the point, isn't profitability. The point is, how much can we do here? What can we push things to? And so when we start looking at this, so like this first replication of O3U, standard management versus high management, right here is our yield column. 176.8 in the standard, 229.7 in the high management. So what's that? 54 bushels, 229 minus 176, 53 bushel difference there. In the second replication of the same hybrids, we were at 206 and 194. So there you're only 12 bushels. And you're like, what the heck is going on? Well, I have a little bit of an explanation on that one. This was the field. Remember, we had all that raccoon damage, specifically in that 103 days. So you'll see these red streaks back here. That was the raccoon damage, and it was in the 103 day, not the 105 day. So there's 3 planter passes of each hybrid, 3 combine passes of each hybrid. Is that right? Yes, because we're split planter. So we had 24 rows, harvested 8. So you notice these 3, that was the 105 day. These 3, that was the 105 day. These 3, that was the 105 day. These 3 were the 103. These 3 were the 103, 103, 103. The raccoons came in and destroyed the 103 day. They left the 105 go. Just maturity and when stuff was ready, the 103 day would have gotten to the sweet corn stage when the raccoons like it a couple of days earlier. They came in, decimated it. And so over here was the high management side. Over here was the standard practice side. And you can see that when you look down here, we got more green, more yellows and oranges over on the standard side. But the coon damage was worse in the standard practice than it was in the high management. Now, did that have anything to do with the treatments? I don't have any idea. But that's why we saw that huge yield difference of 50 some bushel, because it was the coon damage. So where we tried to isolate that out and take some of that out, we saw a 12 bushel difference. Now that the 105 day, where we didn't have the coon damage, is a little bit more reliable data. And on our first replication, you saw a 205 versus 231. Well, that's still 25 bushel difference. That's good. We'll take that. In our second replication, we saw 200 versus 238. Okay, now we're at 38 bushel difference. So this high management and the idea that we can push our crops is valid. We can certainly do it. Foliar fertilizers isn't what's doing it. I think it's the wide drop nitrogen, like I just got talking about, saying, hey, we're probably not putting enough nitrogen out there. I think that's a big factor in it. The fungicides are for sure paying. We already proved that in the last field, that we got 11 bushel bump there, and maybe it was more in this earlier stuff, that earlier maturing corn, that made a bigger difference, or these varieties or whatever. And so that's a part of it. The V5 fungicide is probably a part of it. The insecticide, I would say that's probably minimal, but that doesn't really cost anything either. So trying to isolate out which one of those things are making the biggest difference and the most bang for your buck, if you will, or ROI, is kind of what we're trying to do with all these trials. And, well, we're learning. So anyway, that is what we learned on this field. Okay. Is that it? We got one more. We got one more that I know you guys are going to want to see. I can hear you now. What about the chicken water? You didn't show us the chicken water results. Well, here is the chicken water results. And you're going to look at this yield map and you're going to say, it worked, it worked, it worked. Hold on. Hold on. Because we have a very unintended result, an unintended trial that showed a result. Sometimes it's the things you don't plan on doing that you learn the most from. Happened last year with my double crop beans and seed treatments. Happened this year again with this field, and I was stunned by this. So let me show you what we're dealing with. First, let's talk about the chicken water, okay? I'm gonna pull up the application map for the chicken water. If you don't know what I'm talking about here, we have a chicken litter facility not too far from us that we use a lot of dried chicken litter on our fields. They were trying to sell this product to me this year that was a... basically, they take the chicken litter, they put it in a tank with some water, they heat it up, boil it, and it's supposed to get all the good stuff out of it, and then they sell you the water. And it's very low in nutrients, but it's supposed to have a lot of, you know, biological life and stuff like that in it. Nope, that's not the right map. This one? I don't think this is the right map either. Oh yeah, that's the right map. Okay, and so our theory was we don't spread chicken litter on our fields down to Berkey. If we can get some of the good out of the chicken litter without having to haul the volume of chicken litter down there, maybe we could do this and make it work. So I put it on with the in-furrow in my starter on the planter. The problem was we had 2 totes of 250 gallons each, so I had 500 gallons of this stuff. And it was, how do I put this? It was not filtered very well. And in trying to load my planter, it very, very quickly plugged up my filters. And at some point, a hose burst apart and just covered me in this stuff. And I swore that I will never use this stuff again. But we did get it on, we did make the trial, and we might as well look at the results here. And so here it is. Here is the application versus the yield map. And right away you're gonna say, well, those don't match. You're right, they don't match. So what did they do, first of all, and why don't they match, second of all? And so I remember, and I knew that the break was right on the edge of the farmyard here. It was right on this edge. And we do have a break right here, but that's not right on the edge. So I don't think those are related. Let's just, for the fun of it, pull a block up there and see what kind of yield differences we did see. No, not like that. Come on. Come on. Some days my mouse doesn't work the greatest. All right, we'll do something like that. So this was a... Why does that say 12 gallons? Did I put it in my 2x2? No. I put it in furrow. EKL Biostim, that's what we used. Oh, because we doubled our rate of in furrow. Yeah, we used, okay, so it was a 6 gallon to the acre rate, plus the 6 gallons of regular starter or in furrow starter that I used. So high volume in furrow, putting 12 gallons down in furrow. That's a lot. Yeah. Anyway, data analysis. So, in the target rate not available, which would be the untreated stuff to the north, the yield was 238. In the 11.99, or the 12 gallon, basically the blue, it was 236. That's a 2 bushel loss. It's not really a 2 bushel loss. It's just didn't help. It's no gain. It wasn't the chicken litter water. It did nothing for us. I can fairly confidently, with the data that I am showing here, say it did nothing for me. And as much as I hated using it, we're not going to use it anymore. But that doesn't answer, why do we have this green strip in the middle of this field? And that's what my thought was too. It's like, what in the heck happened there? So I did some digging through some other maps, and here is what I found. I pulled up the application map from the tassel fungicide, made with the Haggy. And oh look, we happen to have a break in the application rates. Not the rate of the chemical, the carrier rate, okay? So here is what, this was done on July 31st. And I remember what happened here. My Haggy guy had sprayed another field, and we had tiled this farm a year ago in the summer. And so some of those tile lines had settled, and they're directly perpendicular to the rows. And I told him, I said, look, it's going to be rough. You don't have to spray that field. Like, this was where I was trying to get a drone to spray it and couldn't get anybody lined up. And essentially I told him, don't worry about it, but you know, whatever. If you want to do it, that's fine. I would like to have it done, but I'm not going to make you. And so he sprayed another field and got done. He's like, well, let me load up a full load to spray this other field when we didn't really need a full load. And he said, I'll do that, and then I'll spray out. I'll go around the perimeter and we'll spray it out.
and I'll see how it is. And if it's not bad, I'll load up and we'll do it again. So that's what he did. So the blue over here in this application map was when he had loaded up for a different field down the road here, and then came in, started along here, went around this side, came here, and then just started going back and forth until he ran out right there. And then he came back up and he's like, yeah, it wasn't so bad, I'll finish the rest of it. Well, at this point now, he's only got like 30, 40 acres to do here. And so he decided, I'm going to use a higher rate. So we went from using blue 15-gallon rate carrier to 20-gallon rate in the yellow. And then he sprayed the rest of it with the same herbicide, same amount of fungicide, 13.7 ounce rate for the Miravis Neo, just used more water, better coverage, coat those plants a little bit better. And that break happens to line up pretty darn well. You don't see it on the south end of the field as much, so I'm a little confused by that, but you definitely can tell it right here. And when I put that on there and we look at the different rates in this data analysis, what does it show? 243 versus 230. They both had the same rate of chemical. The only thing that changed was 5 gallons of water. Yeah. So what that tells me is that in that particular field, in this particular spot, using higher rates of carrier for our fungicide is pretty important, at least with a ground sprayer. Now that gives me a little bit of pause because I just bought a drone to spray at very low carrier volumes across fields. But what you have to remember is that spraying aerially is very different than spraying with a ground rig because you have that prop wash, you have that air effect that is going to disperse that chemical and push it down into the canopy and stuff. So we're going to keep our carrier rates a little bit higher than maybe necessary or maybe what a lot of people do with the drone. We're also going to try and keep our swath width a little narrower if possible because I'm not interested in just covering as many acres as fast as possible. I'm interested in doing the best job possible. And so we'll see. But that was very interesting to me to see that carrier rate made that kind of a difference. But I do believe that that's the difference in this field and not from the chicken water. Now, why things changed when we got to the south side, we don't see such an extreme break, and what this line here is all about, I can't really explain that. Even if I change that to the contour, you can definitely see the strip in the middle, more green on this side than the north side. I don't know exactly. This green strip through the middle, we were having some GPS issues that day where we were taking full passes, but it thought we were only taking 7 rows. My GPS was drifting. It was one of those solar storm days when in the combine, so it kind of screwed up our yield maps just a little bit there. But yeah, that was a pretty interesting finding, something that I wasn't really expecting. So I think that's it from a corn trials standpoint and really everything else. Let me see what else we got to talk about here. Yeah, I do believe that is it. If there's something that you guys remember me doing this summer that I missed here, let me know because there might be a chance that I forgot about a trial that I did, and I'm looking for the data too. So, but yeah, thanks for watching this one. Let's see. I don't think there's anything else I'm going to throw in here right now. This is probably the last video of the year, although I'm going to try and do a live stream at some point in the next couple of days. I don't know when that's going to happen. I'm not real sure when you guys are seeing this. Probably Sunday morning. And if that is the case, if it is Sunday, which would be the 29th of December here, there's a pretty good chance my wife and I are on a ski slope in Colorado right now. Our 10th wedding anniversary is coming up here on New Year's Eve on Tuesday. And so we decided to take a little trip, just the two of us, and we are in Colorado skiing for a couple of days here. And we'll be back middle of the week so that we can get back to work and keep making some videos and doing some stuff. I got some really cool ideas and things coming for next year that I'll show you guys. We'll get started on when we get back. We gotta get that combine finished up and out of the shop there too. But thank you guys for everything this year and for following along and watching these videos and stuff. I'm still having fun with them, so we'll keep making them. Thanks for watching. As always, if you would, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Give that video a thumbs up. Would appreciate that. And yeah, Happy New Year. We'll see you from 2025 next week when I get back. Enjoy your holiday.